So you're hoping that it brings out that sort of division, right?
Yeah, to shake it a little bit, yeah.
A satanic ritual is set to take place at the Kansas Capitol. They're calling it an act of defiance. This morning on Inside Kansas Politics, in an exclusive interview, a satanic leader breaks his silence on a controversial black mass. Plus,
we're going to take in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, and we're going to become so rich, you're not going to know where to spend all that money. I'm telling you, you just watch.
Plus, a tug-of-war over tariffs in North America. President Trump's threat to impose tariffs to Canada and Mexico on pause for now, but how much could it cost you?
we start this morning with the war on trade. You're taking a look inside Kansas politics. Welcome in. I'm Rebecca Chung.
And I'm Rob Hughes. Glad you're here. The president rolled back some of his tariff plans last week, but more are expected to be coming in the next few days.
The tariffs are leaving some businesses uncertain and on edge, and critics say it could cause a trade war, costing families thousands of dollars more per year. President Trump says April 2nd is reciprocal tariff day for the White House. This means the U.S. would match the same amount that's being charged from Canada and Mexico. China imposed a 15% tariff on farm products, including chicken, wheat, and corn, and a 10% tariff on products like beef, fruits, vegetables, and dairy.
And it's in response to the 20% tariffs President Trump rolled out on China last week. President Trump also not ruling out a recession this year.
All right, we're here now with Washburn economics professor Paul Byrne. And Paul, let's talk a little bit about how these tariffs could impact us here in Kansas. Let's start with the ones that are potentially there for Canada and Mexico.
So Trump is looking to put up to 25% tariffs on most goods, non-NAFTA goods coming in from both Mexico and Canada. So the net impact on all the tariffs, both the tariffs in China and those tariffs on China and Mexico and Canada, will probably increase consumer prices. It's a tax, so it's going to be passed on just like any other tax. It should, for each household, it would probably be paying about $800 a year more as a result of those tariffs.
So I have to adjust the budget to that. And do also want to ask you, Paul, about the 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum. Of course, took effect this week. Now, how could that impact us here in the state of Kansas?
Well, any manufacturers that use steel and aluminum, whether they're being sourced from overseas or locally, it's going to result in higher prices. So the manufacturing sector is going to have to pay more for the steel and aluminum that they are using. That gets passed on in terms of higher costs. So just like any other tax, right, the tax is going to be paid for by both the firms and the customers who ultimately use them. It's going to generate some additional revenue. Maybe the government could lower taxes somewhere else, but the net impact is that the taxes are going to ultimately be paid by either firms or the end users. Okay,
so is not too much impact on consumers, is what you're saying?
No, it'll be impacted.
Right.
So the tax foundations, their most recent estimates I looked at says that households are going to see a decrease in after-tax income by about $800. So it's going to that's going to be the cost to the households of those tariffs.
I want to ask you, Paul, historically, looking at the concept of tariffs, looking how they've been used in the past, what do you anticipate this time? I know we don't have a crystal ball, but,
right.
What are your thoughts on now versus the past and tariffs being used?
I think the impact, the economics is still the same. So I think the impact will be pretty much similar. It's hard to predict. One, just because they seem to change week by week. We're going to have tariffs. We're not going to have tariffs. I think if it was a more If Congress and the president got together and say this is what we're going to do and we're going to raise these tariffs in 6 months, then I think businesses would have a little bit more certainty as what's going to happen. But I think the impact will be the same in the sense, and it will depend on how our trading partners respond. If it leads to a tariff war where each side keeps raising tariffs, and then that tax is going to get higher and higher, and there'll be a bigger and bigger impact. The economy is going to be a little bit smaller as a result of the higher costs of production.
Okay, estimates right now showing an impact on consumers that it's a bit more substantial than some would think. But President Trump says that this would pay off in the end. Do you agree?
It depends how you define payoff, right? If you're defining payoff as GDP growth, then most economists I know would say no, right? It's more efficient to have lower tariffs and to have freer trade if we're defining our goal as having higher GDP growth, because we're not purchasing goods that we can get at a lower cost. But it depends on your goal. You know, if the Goodyear plant stays open because of those tariffs and you work at that plant, you may have a different perspective than those of us who are paying that extra $800. So I think in general, we're going to have a smaller economy as a result of those tariffs. but there's going to be winners and losers. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to be better off in a free trade, just that the extra costs are going to, as a whole, it's going to add up more than the industries that may ultimately be protected.
All right, who are the winners and losers here, do you think?
Well, I think if we're looking at the steel and aluminum tariffs, if you're a domestic aluminum and steel producer, you're going to be a winner, right? More people are going to be buying your product, prices are going to be higher. If you're a manufacturer who is protected by the tariffs, you're not importing a lot of your inputs that you're using, you could be better off as well as if you have less competition. If you're a manufacturer who's relying on the steel and lower steel and aluminum prices, and you're not worried too much about competition, because foreign competition for your output, because maybe transportation costs make it infeasible to import from another country, you're going to be a loser because you're going to be paying the higher prices. You're going to have to pass those prices on, and not as many people are going to buy your product.
All right, Paul, thank you so much. Coming up after the break.
Kansas is a diverse group of people with diverse needs.
We hear for the first time from a satanic leader who's defying the governor, hosting a black mass inside the Kansas Capitol.
But what's behind the controversial protest and how religious groups are pushing back? Be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
Hi, folks. For over 35 years, we've been proudly serving the surrounding communities with professional installation and quality products.
With a 10,000 square storehouse, we custom stain and paint the materials ourselves to make sure that you get the perfect match for your project.
We invite you to come visit our showroom where you can see all the newest options on windows, kitchens, baths, screen rooms, and decks.
Our commitment to excellence is unmatched as we continue to be your go-to destination for all your home improvement needs.
We are your home remodeling specialists.
At Knoller, we get a lot of questions about our Ford products, but none more than this Bronco Raptor. This Bronco Raptor is equipped with a 3.0 twin-turbo, 418 horsepower, 440 pounds of torque. This baby moves. Whether you're out boulder crawling, cruising the highway, or sand duning, the Ford Bronco Raptor is fitted with available technology to keep you connected and entertained. So, for everybody looking for a new vehicle, from EVs to Super Duties, come down to Knoller and let us get you taken care of.
He faced the wounds of war with courage, serving his country with honor. Now, years later, Frank faces new challenges, wounds brought by time. But Frank didn't face them alone. He turned to Total Wound Care, specializing in cutting-edge wound care delivered right to his home. With expertise, compassion, and the latest treatment technologies, Total Wound Care helped Frank heal. Covered by Medicare, Medicare Advantage plans, and a preferred provider of the VA. Total Wound Care Specialty Group.
27 News is proud to be part of Northeast Kansas and the surrounding communities. We stay close to the roots of Northeast Kansas, and our team is deeply rooted in the community.
With our 27 News brand working for you, we celebrate the good happening in our community and hold the powerful accountable.
And when severe weather threatens, the 27 News Storm Track weather team is quickly online and on air to give you advance warning.
27 News, proud to be working for Northeast Kansas, working for you.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. It is a story you will only see here. In an exclusive interview, a satanic leader is breaking his silence on a black mass at the Kansas State House.
I spoke with him one-on-one, and we're also hearing from religious groups this morning who are pushing back. Kansas Satanists are planning to defy the governor, hosting a black mass inside the Kansas State House. So, of course, a bit more outrage from some groups that may be a bit more religious, because this is sort of a parody on their practices, correct?
Yes, but I also think that's kind of an unfair examination of it, too.
Michael Stewart, founder and president of the Satanic Grotto, is speaking exclusively with our Kansas Capitol Bureau. He says his group will host their ritual in the Capitol building, even if it means getting arrested by Capitol Police. Stewart says it's an act of defiance and rebellion, one of the core themes in Satanism. What are you hoping they take away from this black mass?
I'm hoping that our legislature remembers that Kansas is a diverse group of people with diverse needs and wants, and stops placating to just the largest demographic of religious people.
Stewart says they're protesting oppression, those who have imposed their religion on them and have failed them. But Chuck Weber, executive director of the Kansas Catholic Conference, is calling it anti-Catholic bigotry.
And I think also just the fact that they want to bring it front and center here at the Kansas State Capitol is also deeply disturbing. Again, more shock value. This is the people's house. we wouldn't allow this kind of behavior in our homes. Why should we allow it here at the state capitol?
The event is igniting a heated debate over freedom of speech and expression, with Catholics arguing it goes too far. Even if you don't agree with what they're doing, they still are human, and their taxpayer dollars also fund the Capitol as well. So what are your thoughts on them expressing themselves in this way? Do you think they have the freedom to do that?
Well, we don't know exactly what this satanic worship event is going to look like, but what we've read, it crosses a line of just expressing one's opinion, and it crosses a line into inciting conflict.
Weber says past protests from Satanists have included insightful language laden with expletives. He fears that it could disrupt lawmakers as they try to wrap up session. But Stewart says there's nothing to be afraid of. I've never been to a black mass. For people who don't know, how could you describe this?
We are going to observe certain rules that preclude certain things from what we would do in private. Ours tend to be a little more body, a little more ruckus, smoke and mirrors and fun. We can't make any messes here. We can't do a lot of things. So what we're going to do is heavily lean into what I call the 4 blasphemies, kind of representing an alternate to the Stations of the Cross.
Stewart says religion has taken center stage in some debates at the State House, like abortion. Catholic groups have advocated for more restrictions on abortions in the state. But in 2022, Kansas voters decided to uphold abortion rights in the state's constitution.
If there are Catholics here fighting against abortion rights, which Kansas has decidingly and overwhelmingly voted for, then I will use those same mechanisms to speak back.
Then would you argue that religion has somehow infiltrated the State House, not just, national politics, and for that reason you're using it as a way to combat what you're seeing here through legislation?
I think that is a great way to summarize that.
To actually say that whatever Christian influence, Judeo-Christian influence has here in the state capitol and on our laws is a good thing. I think Satan worship and satanic thinking is a bad thing. And so I'm ready to have that fight and that debate any day of the week.
The Black Mass is set to take place on March 28th. Reporting from the Kansas State Capitol, I'm Rebecca Chung.
And we're here now with our panel of political experts to dive into this issue. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. We have senior reporter for the Kansas Reflector, Tim Carpenter. Tim, thanks for being here. And of course, we have our state and local government professor, Bill Feinder. Gentlemen, thank you.
Good to be here.
Now let's start with Tim. When we talked about freedom of expression and freedom of speech, how that plays a role in this. Let's talk a little bit about how religious groups are saying that this goes too far. Do you think there's weight to that?
Well, I think the whole reaction to it is kind of interesting because the House and Senate, every day they open their session, has a prayer, a Christian prayer. And there's been an increase over the years in the number of legislators in debates about public policy that have recited scripture or encouraged the public to adhere to Christian ideology. So it's a little bizarre that there'd be such a clamor to kick these people out of the building before they've even had the opportunity to misbehave.
Okay.
It's very interesting. I mean, lawmakers always tell me it's the people's house, but you think about, the government's role though in free expression. We think First Amendment. I mean, Bill, what are your thoughts on this?
That's a great comment, Rob. The people's house. I got a lot of thoughts there, but let's talk about government's role here for a second in free speech. It's obviously we know that's protected. Freedom of religion is protected as well, but government does have a role defined by the courts over the years to regulate the time, place, and manner of that speech. Think about parades, think about commercial signs, think about people picketing funerals. Government has a role as long as there's a compelling interest, such as public safety is probably one of the biggest ones. And so if, in this case, there is reason to believe there could be misbehaving, and that can be somewhat is a reasonable deduction, then saying to a group, here's the time, here's the place, and here's whether it's how big it can be, no burning of things, whatever the rules might. There's the manner of which you could exercise that free speech. That is a constitutional line that government plays in regulating free speech. Even though we think of it as free, it's not always free. It's free if.
Well, you can't shout fire in a crowded theater.
Yeah, inciting people and then inciting violence and having some form of threat to the public or perceived threat. That is a line that you can at least say, hey, we'll give you a space to do that, and here are the conditions under which you can do that. You can still express your speech. That is perfectly recognized by the courts in local and state government.
It's interesting, the objections to it have raised the profile of this protest immeasurably, and so they're getting a heck of a lot more attention from it than if everybody would just left them alone and let them have their little 15-person protest somewhere in the Capitol building.
Okay, well, let's also talk about the separation between church and state, because this is a question I asked both sides. I know that Catholic groups right now are calling for this event to be denied altogether, but I wonder, a conversation that I think needs to be had is whether denying this event from happening would favor one religion over the other. Tim, what do you think about that?
I just think the more you push back against something like this, the more traction you're going to give the American Civil Liberties Union to file lawsuits about this kind of thing. And so I think to repeatedly define the separation of church and state is something that will be left to the courts. And if you want to take this approach and say, and ban certain people, you have to be willing to catch it on the backside with litigation.
I want to go back to what you mentioned talking about earlier, Tim. So you're saying this is what they want. They want to make noise. They want to be loud. They want the attention. So in other words, this is a tactic. What they're doing. What do you think?
I would think so. I mean, they let everybody know they were coming, and they let the critics of it know. And so then the furor, and you had people stomping around on the House floor wanting to sign a petition to keep them out, and it plays into the political arena as well. People want a grandstand, and so that just gave them a lot more attention. So there'll be a heck of a lot more people paying attention to their protest than would otherwise.
Yeah, very well said. And we talked a little bit about the separation of church and state already, and we talked earlier about how Bill, like you're saying, meetings begin with a prayer. How does church and state though apply here? I mean, this is certainly an outlier we don't see too often, of course.
Yeah, again, freedom of expression, freedom, the freedom to establish a religion is clearly protected. So where does government's role come in this case?
There's a freedom to peaceably assemble too.
That too.
Are they peaceably assembling? We don't know yet because it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. The one thing a government would have to steer clear of is picking a winner or a loser, and that is usually by determining the time, place, and manner without determining or stifling the content. So the content, they can't choose which content they like to regulate and which they don't like to regulate. This just feels to me like a little bit of a political a stance for the governor, certainly for the legislature, we understand, but for the governor, because we've talked a lot about it, but when someone hears just a 5-second or 10-second or reads a headline of this, they're not going to know what this group does or what they really were intending to do. They just think it's nuts. And so I think from a political standpoint, you don't want to be on the side of siding with something that is so extreme in this case.
All right, thank you both.
A good set of precedent. We'll see. Gentlemen, thank you. Well, when we come back, we are breaking down some of the bills to watch at the State House this week.
We'll be right back. You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
The story of Grace Med has always been told through its people, both those who serve and those who it is our honor to serve. We meet at the intersection of compassion and vulnerability, bringing health where there was illness and hope where there was despair. Our patients come to us bearing the weight of living in the margins, and we share the love of Jesus Christ with them by providing compassionate quality health care for all their physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. Because health restored is always hope renewed. Find hope today by scheduling an appointment with Grace Med.
Car accident? When Devon James wins, it makes a big difference.
Here's what we mean. Insurance offer, $0. Devon James result, $150,000.
Insurance offer, $10,000. Our result, $265,000.
Insurance offer, $0. Our result, $1.25 million.
After an accident, don't trust the insurance company's first offer.
Call us at Devon James and find out what we can win for you.
Play the 27 KSNT Basketball Challenge. Sign up for your chance to win a 65-inch 4K Smart TV. Join now at ksnt.com. Sponsored by Kansas 811, Pooh Squad, Kansas Athletics, and these fine sponsors.
Can I get a Kelly in here? Oh, yes, you can. It's Kelly Clarkson, y'all! Every day on Kelly. Yeah, I'm here. Feel the love. So friggin' excited. I was gonna keep it chill, but if I had this job, I would never keep it chill. Everything you want, it's all right here. I love this crowd!
Y'all, it's an all-new Kelly.
All new weekdays.
Weekdays at 3 on 27 KSNT.
Welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. It's an issue that comes up every year at the State House, marijuana. Could this be the year that Kansas legalizes it in some form?
Yeah, I talked to both sides to find out if Kansas might be closer to joining 48 other states and changing up their marijuana laws.
I just think that it's time. I just think it's time that we come to a compromise on this, that both sides of the aisle come together on this.
House Bill 2405 would legalize the growth and distribution of marijuana, while Senate Bill 294 would legalize medical marijuana.
And when you look specifically at patient access, it's our opinion that at this point, it's just inhumane to keep the medicinal part of it away from patients.
Olivia Hayes with the Kansas Cannabis Coalition says advocates are trying to let law-abiding citizens remain law-abiding citizens while treating their bodies.
It's people that just want to be able to wake up in the morning and not feel pain in their bodies, whether that's, physically or mentally. They just want to feel normal, not necessarily high.
The Kansas Bureau of Investigation sent us a statement saying the KBI opposes any progression toward illicit drug legalization, including marijuana, because of the dangerous outcomes it will impose on Kansas communities. Increased accessibility to cannabis will make our young people less healthy and our communities less safe. Despite similar efforts being shot down before, advocates hope this time they can reach a compromise.
I think it's time, that we evolve and that we put down kind of those ideas of the past and come together and allow some access.
And back now with Tim and Bill. Gentlemen, when I spoke with Olivia, she believes that Kansas isn't ready for adult use recreational marijuana, the House bill, but the Senate bill, medicinal marijuana, people living in chronic pain every day and just want to feel better. Do you think they can get that through this year?
You're going to have to color me unconvinced still. There are a lot of good arguments that were presented. Two-thirds of Kansans support recreational. There was actually, we lose a lot of money across the state lines because of this. It shouldn't be maybe a priority of law enforcement where they could devote their resources to other higher priority things. So there's a lot of arguments in that. But there was a chance to add medicinal marijuana for terminally ill patients earlier in the session. It was defeated as an amendment to another bill that was expanding medications. So based on all of this, I'm unconvinced even that is going to get traction.
And Tim, what's some of the inside baseball on this?
Well, I'm with you. I think until the Republican leadership in the House and Senate greenlight a bill, whether it's medical marijuana or recreational, this is not going to happen. And I don't really see that at the moment. Maybe in the future there'll be that opportunity to do it.
All right.
Yeah, we saw push through, like for example in Missouri, and they were trying to, and they give money to veterans charities, for example, some of the proceeds. Maybe something like that would help push it through to where it could be beneficial for all parties involved.
Sure.
Interesting. Yeah, well, they've been pushing for 10 years, and we'll see.
The people voted for that in Missouri, by the way. That was not the legislature. So we don't have that chance here in Kansas, which is a whole nother topic.
All right. Well, thanks so much, gentlemen. And by the way, another bill to watch is the bill eliminating tenure rights, and this goes back to the tenure fight, of course, in Emporia State over those mass layoffs. Tim, fill us in on where things stand with that.
Let's see if I can quickly summarize. Emporia State University's president a few years ago fired some tenured faculty. They sued. The plaintiffs won a big decision in December in which a federal judge said tenure is accompanied by a property right that just can't be cast aside willy-nilly when a university president says so. And so what happened was an ESU General Counsel submitted a bill to the legislature that would eliminate this property right in all tenure retroactively in every college and university in Kansas. So the president of Kansas State University, the chancellor at the University of Kansas, are vehemently opposed to this because it's going to damage their faculty recruiting, destroy research programs, and maybe run students off. And so I think the advocates for it are hunting for votes. And if they've got to look this hard for it, it's problematic, and it's probably veto bait for Governor Laura Kelly.
All right, thank you both. We'll be right back after the break.
You're watching Inside Kansas Politics.
At Knoller, we get a lot of questions about all of our Ford products, but none more than this Bronco Raptor. This Bronco Raptor is equipped with a 3.0 twin-turbo, 418 horsepower, 440 pounds of torque. This baby moves. This vehicle is equipped with 4 different drive select modes, including GOAT mode, which gets you over any type of terrain. This Bronco Raptor has 37-inch wheels, which help create this 13.1-inch ground clearance. And the best part about these Broncos are whether you're trudging through the mud in the rain with the tops on or enjoying a nice cruise down the boulevard with the tops off, they have the versatility to suit any of your needs. When you're out boulder crawling, cruising the highway, or sand duning, the Ford Bronco Raptor is fitted with available technology to keep you connected and entertained. So, for everybody looking for a new vehicle, from EVs to Super Duties, come down to Knoller and let us get you taken care of.
At Kansas State University Veterinary Health Center, we provide both specialty and primary health care services for your livestock. Hi, I am Sean Hoosier, an on-farm food animal veterinarian at K-State. Whether your farm is large or small, we have the resources and personnel to respond and care for individual animals, herd health, or emergencies. Our team of experts can tailor herd health plans for your farm and find solutions to any existing challenges. The Veterinary Health Center, to discover, to teach, to heal.
Hi folks, at Window Design and Remodeling, we build decks of all styles and shapes. With our composite decking, you will never have to worry about splinters or maintenance again. We have different types of handrails to choose from: composite, cable, aluminum, and glass panels with lighted posts and caps. And if you want a roof or shade cover over your deck, we can build that also. For an excellent job and an affordable price, give us a call today. We are your home remodeling specialists.
And welcome back to Inside Kansas Politics. Before we go, we also want to talk about new developments in the scuffle on the House floor between Wichita Republican Nick Hoheisel and Democrat Ford Carr. Now, after Carr filed a complaint against Hoheisel, well, another Wichita Republican, Leah Howell, came out and then filed a complaint against Carr, accusing him of a hostile work environment.
Tim, let's start with you. What's going on here?
Yeah, so the new complaint says that Representative Carr has been brash and outrageous in his interactions in speeches and in text and emails and everything else, been very aggressive and confrontational. And I think there's Republicans and Democrats that are sick and tired of it. Both House Republican leadership, House Democrat leadership warned him previously that if he continued with this behavior, they'd file a complaint, and that's exactly what they've done. And that complaint is now in the hands of a special bipartisan House committee that's going to investigate the claim.
Bill, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think, Tim, you made a good point the other day about bringing guns into the Capitol, which is what kind of started some of this. And Carr accused Hoheisel of packing, I guess. And so they give themselves an exemption, which is kind of interesting, and we could have a little OK Corral at some point, maybe.
Representative Carr, you got to remember, got in a bar fight with a Wichita City Council member earlier this legislative session, and you know he's you read his emails and stuff, and he's putting his fist up and he's ready to duke it out with people, and he keeps talking about racism among Kansas legislators, and that is a line that I think the Republican leadership won't tolerate because they don't want to be called racist.
How could this end for Carr?
So the committee has the power to recommend to the full House that he could be just censured or thrown out of the legislature. And that would take a vote of the full House. Of course, if they did throw him out of the House, as Representative Carr told me, he could just run for the seat again later. So if the Democrats were in control, you know, what the Republicans do today, now keep in mind the Republicans have a supermajority and it may be decades before the Democrats take control of the House. But whatever Republicans do today, they need to remember that Democrats can do back to them someday in the future. So maybe they want to tone it down a little bit. I'd be surprised if they really sanction him hard and throw him out. It would be unprecedented as far as I'm concerned in recent memory.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for your time and insight. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here.
And that was your look inside Kansas politics. We'll see you right here next Sunday, same time, same place.
And have a wonderful day.